Have you ever had one of those nights where everything feels too heavy and you just need to let go, maybe? You've done something unexpected to shake off the stress. Something you thought would stay as just a blurry memory, but what if that reckless moment turned your whole life upside down? That's exactly what happened to Lila Hartman, a 28-year-old yoga instructor from Asheville, North Carolina. She was just a regular woman teaching classes, sipping herbal tea, and trying to hold her life together, but one night changed everything, and it all started with a single decision to step out of her comfort zone. Lila had been having a rough time. Her days were packed with back-to-back yoga sessions, her inbox was overflowing with client emails, and her heart was still aching from a breakup that had left her questioning everything. She was tired, burned out, and honestly a little lost when her best friend Chloe Harper called her one rainy Thursday afternoon with an invitation to a charity gala in downtown Asheville. Lila hesitated. A night of dressing up, mingling with strangers and pretending to be carefree sounded exhausting. But Chloe wouldn't take no for an answer. She insisted it would be a chance to escape the chaos for just a few hours. Reluctantly, Lila agreed, thinking maybe a little sparkle and champagne could lift her spirits. What she didn't expect was that this night would lead her straight into the arms of Adrian Steele. Yes, that Adrian Steele, the billionaire CEO of Steel Dynamics, one of the largest tech corporations on the East Coast. He wasn't just some man in a suit. He was a man with power, charm, and a life so far removed from Lila's that they might as well have come from different worlds. But that night, in the glow of chandeliers and the hum of a crowded ballroom, their paths crossed. It was a fleeting, impulsive moment. A night neither of them planned. Lila thought it would be just a one-time thing, a story she'd laugh about later with Chloe. Adrian thought it was just another blur in his high-profile life. They were both wrong. Because that night wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something much bigger. Something that would pull them back together years later, in ways neither of them could have imagined. The night of the gala arrived, and the city glowed under a canopy of lights. The hotel hosting the event was a sleek glass masterpiece standing tall in the heart of Asheville. Inside the grand ballroom, glittering chandeliers cast warm light across polished floors. Lila stepped through the doors, feeling completely out of place. Chloe had convinced her to wear a borrowed black dress that hugged her curves and a pair of heels. She could barely walk in. She tugged at the hem, feeling awkward while Chloe looped her arm through hers and led her toward the bar. The room was alive with music, soft laughter, and the clinking of champagne glasses. Guests in tuxedos and gowns mingled, bidding on silent auction items and exchanging stories about their glamorous lives. Lila grabbed a drink, hoping it would calm her nerves, and tried her best to blend in. That's when she saw him. He was standing near the dance floor, tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a tailored suit with a simple black mask covering half his face. His dark hair was slightly tousled, and there was something about the way he carried himself, confident but effortless, that caught her attention. Chloe nudged her playfully, whispering that he looked like trouble. In the best possible way. Before Lila could protest, the stranger turned and met her gaze. His eyes locked on hers, crinkling with a smile as he began walking toward her. Close, he was even more striking. His deep voice cut through the music, making her forget her unease. He introduced himself simply as a guest, without offering a name, and asked if she wanted to dance. Against her better judgment, she said yes. One dance turned into two, then three. Their conversation flowed effortlessly, touching on nothing and everything. He teased her about her unsteady heels, and she laughed harder than she had in weeks. Somewhere along the way, Chloe slipped away into the crowd, leaving Lila alone with the masked stranger. The drinks kept coming, the music wrapped around them, and the room seemed to fade until it felt like it was just the two of them. Somewhere in that blur, someone suggested leaving the gala, and the next thing Lila knew, they were in an elevator, then a quiet hallway, and finally a hotel room upstairs. It was reckless, it was impulsive, it was nothing like her, but in that moment, she didn't care. The stress that had been weighing on her melted away, replaced by the thrill of being close to someone who made her feel alive. Stumbled into the room laughing, shedding jackets and masks. He was handsome without the disguise, his sharp cheekbones framing a grin that made her heart race. Neither of them asked for names, and neither offered. It was an unspoken agreement, a bubble of anonymity. They both wanted to keep clothes, hit the floor, and the rest was a whirlwind of heat and touch. A night that felt almost like a dream. Hours later, they fell asleep tangled in the sheets. The city lights spilling in through the wide windows. Lila didn't think about tomorrow. She was too caught in the moment, too caught in him. Morning came too quickly. Lila woke with a pounding headache and a wave of panic. The hotel room was quiet, bathed in pale sunlight streaming through the curtains. She sat up, clutching the sheet to her chest, only to find the space beside her empty. The stranger was gone. Her eyes darted around the room. Her heels were missing, one strap was broken, and her black dress lay in a wrinkled heap on the floor. On the nightstand sat a silver bracelet, simple but elegant, with delicate engravings she couldn't quite make out. Beside it, a note scribbled on hotel stationery, read, "Thank you for the dance." That was it, no name, no phone number. Half embarrassed, half amused, Lila slipped the bracelet onto her wrist. It felt strange leaving it behind, so she took it as a small piece of the night she could keep. She dressed quickly, her mind still foggy from the evening before, and left the hotel without looking back. Bombarded her with messages all day, demanding details. Lila brushed it off with a laugh, calling it a one-time lapse in judgment. A crazy story for the books. She returned to her normal life, her yoga classes, her quiet apartment, her usual rhythm. Bracelet stayed on her wrist, a silent reminder of the wildest night she'd ever had. She told herself it was just a quirky memento, nothing more. What she didn't know was that the night was far from over. That moment had planted a seed that would grow in ways she couldn't yet imagine. 5 years passed, and life looked different for Lila Hartman. She wasn't the frazzled yoga instructor, barely holding herself together anymore. Sure, she still had her chaotic moments, like when her aging car broke down on the way to class, or when a student accidentally spilled kombucha across the studio floor. But overall, she had built something. She was proud of. Her yoga studio in Asheville had grown into a local favorite, with classes booked solid and a waiting list that stretched weeks in advance. She had moved out of her tiny apartment into a cozy loft with a view of the French Broad River, and for the first time in years, she was sleeping peacefully at night. The silver bracelet from that unforgettable gala night still rested on her wrist. She told herself it was just a lucky charm, a meaningless souvenir from a blurry memory that she'd tucked far away in the past. Everything was steady until Chloe Harper appeared at her studio. One afternoon, brimming with excitement, Chloe had landed a corporate wellness contract in Richmond, Virginia, for a weekend and needed a yoga professional to help lead the sessions. The client, Steel Dynamics, one of the biggest tech corporations in the country. Lila hesitated at the thought of leaving her studio for the weekend. She pictured a room full of executives in sharp suits, checking their phones during meditation poses. But Chloe knew how to persuade her. She promised an all-expenses paid hotel stay, excellent coffee, and a good chance to network. With a reluctant smile, Lila packed her mats and supplies and joined Chloe for the drive north to Richmond. The towering glass headquarters of Steel Dynamics rose high above the city skyline. The building radiated wealth and ambition, making Lila feel completely out of place as she stepped through the polished lobby in her leggings and messy bunk. Chloe led her to a large conference room, where a group of employees were already gathered waiting for the workshop. Many of them looked skeptical and bored. Lila smiled professionally, setting up the mats and beginning the session. Halfway through, explaining the basics of a warrior pose, when the door opened, a man stepped inside. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a crisp suit with dark hair perfectly in place. His very presence shifted the room. He wasn't here to join the yoga class, he was here to observe. And Lila froze. It was him at first. Lila didn't believe her eyes. The man standing at the door looked even more striking than he had that night 5 years ago. His dark suit was perfectly tailored, his posture confident, his expression calm, as if he owned the room. And of course, he did, because he was Adrian Steele, CEO of Steel Dynamics. Lila's heart hammered in her chest. Her mind raced back to the gala, the mask, the dance, the night that ended with a silver bracelet on her wrist. She managed to keep her voice steady as she continued the session, grateful that he didn't seem to recognize her. His presence made her clumsy. She stumbled over her words and nearly knocked over a water bottle, while employees tried to hide their smirks. Adrian's sharp gaze moved across the room before settling on her. His eyes lingered just a little longer than necessary when they fell on the silver bracelet glinting on her wrist. A flicker of curiosity crossed his face, but he said nothing when the session ended. The employees filed out quickly, but Adrian stayed leaning casually against the doorway, watching her pack up her matzi. Stepped forward, introducing himself formally and offering his hand. She gave a nervous smile, answering simply, "Leela Hartman," careful to avoid any hint of recognition. He asked her a few polite questions about the workshop, his tone warm and unusually interested. She kept her answers short, hoping to leave without stirring any memories, but Adrian's curiosity only grew. His attention drifted again to the bracelet. "That's a unique piece. Where did you get it?" he asked casually. Leela hesitated, her mind flashing back to the hotel room. She forced a light laugh and replied, "Just something I picked up a long time ago." Before Adrian could press further, another figure entered the room, his Aunt Victoria Steele, impeccably dressed, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had arrived to observe the wellness program, but the moment her gaze landed on Lila's bracelet, her expression changed. Her smile faltered, her posture stiffened. Victoria recognized that design. The intricate carvings weren't just decorative, they were the mark of Wexford Industries, the rival company Steel Dynamics had crushed 2 decades earlier, and along with that history came a secret she had buried long ago. Victoria excused herself quietly, but her mind was already racing. She left the room with her phone in hand, dialing her son Damien Steele. "We may have a problem," she said sharply. "That yoga instructor is wearing the Wexford heirloom. She could be the girl we lost track of." Back in the conference room, Leela finished packing her things, Adrian still lingering nearby, suggesting she stay for a coffee after the session. She wanted to refuse, but Chloe overheard and jumped in, encouraging her to accept, not realizing how complicated it truly was. Victoria, however, had no intention of letting this woman remain close to her nephew. Victoria Steele left the conference room with her thoughts in overdrive. She had spent years making sure the scandal with Wexford Industries stayed buried, and now a single piece of jewelry threatened to unravel everything. She called her son Damien Steele from her office, her voice sharp and urgent. "That bracelet Leela Hartman is wearing, it belongs to the Wexford family. I saw it on the child's wrist the night we removed her from the equation. If she figures out who she is, she could make a legal claim on everything we took." Damien leaned back in his leather chair in his own office, brushing it off at first. "You think a yoga teacher is about to take down the Steele empire? That's a stretch," but his mother's tone left no room for doubt. "She is the Wexford girl, Damien, and if Adrian gets too close to her, we could lose control of everything. We cannot let that happen." While they plotted, Adrian had a different idea. He was intrigued by Leela in a way he couldn't explain. There was something familiar about her, something that lingered at the edge of his memory. He invited her to remain in Richmond for a few days, offering her more work on Steel Dynamics' corporate wellness program. Leela tried to protest, but Chloe was thrilled at the opportunity and convinced her to accept. Over the next few days, Adrian found excuses to see her more often. He stopped by the wellness sessions, lingered after her classes, and asked questions about her life. He told her about the history of Steel Dynamics, how the company had been built from nothing into a powerhouse, and even mentioned their biggest rival from decades ago, Wexford Industries. Leela didn't know why the name stuck in her mind, but it did something about it. Felt heavy. She brushed the thought aside, focusing instead on Adrian, who was showing her a side of himself she didn't expect. He wasn't just a CEO full of charm and confidence, he was also surprisingly thoughtful, asking about her yoga philosophy, her favorite places to travel, even teasing her about her ancient car back in Asheville. Every moment she spent with him deepened the pull between them, but it also left her unsettled. The bracelet on her wrist felt heavier, as if it was waiting to reveal something she wasn't ready to know. Victoria watched their growing connection with narrowed eyes. She had spent decades ensuring the Wexford name was buried. She wouldn't let one woman threaten that. Now Leela Hartman couldn't ignore the strange feeling that had been growing inside her ever since she arrived in Richmond. The bracelet on her wrist felt like more than just an accessory. She had been having vivid dreams each night, dreams of a large estate, a woman's soft voice, a life that didn't feel like her own. She tried to laugh it off, blaming stress, but the unease wouldn't Chloe noticed her distraction and suggested they see a local psychic, someone she had visited. Years ago, the woman's name was Isabel Crane, and her shop was a small but charming place, filled with the scent of sage and the soft glow of candlelight. The moment Lila stepped inside, Isabel's sharp eyes locked onto her wrist. Isabel reached out her thin hand, gently turning the bracelet. "Where did you get this?" she asked. Her voice carried both awe and urgency. Lila hesitated. "It was given to me years ago." "It's nothing important." Isabel shook her head slowly. "This is no ordinary bracelet. This is an heirloom of the Wexford family, passed down through generations. You carry their blood." Lila's heart skipped. She laughed nervously, insisting it was impossible. Isabel's voice grew steady. "You are the daughter that was lost. You were taken from them as a child, everything you've been dreaming about." Israel. Lila left the shop, shaken, trying to convince herself it was nonsense, but the name Wexford kept echoing in her mind. That evening, Adrian invited her to a company gala, an event filled with investors, partners, and some of the most influential people in the city. Chloe convinced her to attend, loaning her a deep green gown that made her look like she belonged among the guests. The ballroom was grand and alive, with music. Adrian's face lit up when he saw her. He guided her through the crowd with ease, making sure she was comfortable. She almost forgot about Isabel's warning until Adrian's Aunt Victoria appeared. Victoria approached her near the bar, her smile tight, her tone polite, but icy lovely. "Bracelet, where did you get it?" Lila's fingers instinctively brushed over the silver band. "It was a gift," she said softly. Victoria's gaze sharpened. "It looks expensive. Are you sure you belong in a place like this?" Her words dripped with condescension, and before Lila could answer, Victoria turned toward the crowd, speaking just loud enough for others to hear. "Everyone, this is Adrian's new friend. She certainly has an eye for fine jewelry, perhaps more than just yoga court her interest." A few people laughed. Lila felt her cheeks. Adrian appeared at her side, his voice firm. "She's here because I asked her to be." Victoria. He took Lila's hand, leading her away from the whispers. His touch was steady, but Lila's thoughts were anything but calm. Victoria's words stuck in her mind. The bracelet felt heavier than ever. Victoria Steele had seen the way Adrian defended Lila at the gala, the way he looked at her with something more than passing interest, and it set off every alarm in her mind. She had worked too hard to bury the truth about Wexford Industries, to let one woman bring it all back. Now she was done playing polite. That night, she called Damien. Her voice was sharp and decisive. "We are finished waiting. If she stays close to Adrian, she will find out who she is. We need her out of Richmond tonight." Damien rolled his eyes, tired of his mother's constant schemes, but he understood the stakes. Victoria laid out her plan. She had arranged for someone to pay Lila a late-night visit, a scare, nothing fatal, just enough to send her packing back to Ashfilat, the hotel. Lila paced the room, unable to shake the tension from the evening. Chloe had fallen asleep on the couch, but Lila couldn't rest. Her thoughts bounced between Adrian's steady defense of her and Isabel Crane's strange warning about her identity. She considered texting Adrian when a noise outside made her freeze. Footsteps, heavy, deliberate, they stopped right at her door. Her pulse spiked. She rushed to wake Chloe, whispering, "Someone's outside." Chloe stirred but was half asleep and dismissed it. The doorknob rattled. Lila's chest tightened. She grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, ready to defend herself. When her phone buzzed, it was Adrian, a simple message. "Are you awake? I'm outside." She hesitated for only a second before unlocking the door, and there he was, standing in the hall, his dark hair slightly tousled, his suit jacket open. Concern flickered in his eyes as he stepped inside. "Are you all right?" The hallway was now empty. The shadow of whoever had been there was gone. Lila's voice shook. "I think someone was following me." Adrian's expression hardened. He stepped back into the hall, checking both directions before returning. "Nobody's here, but you're not staying here tonight. Come with me." The rain-slick streets of Richmond blurred past as Adrian drove them to the Steel Dynamics headquarters. "You'll be safer here," he said, leading her into his private office. Lila sat quietly, her fingers brushing the silver bracelet as he began opening a locked cabinet. "If you really are connected to Wexford, there will be something here to prove it," Adrian muttered. Flipping through old files, Leela joined him, scanning papers until her eyes caught on a faded photograph, a baby wearing a silver bracelet. The same engravings she wore now beneath it, a note in careful handwriting: child, removed 1999 v. Her breath caught. That's me, she whispered. VS Victoria Steele. Adrian stared at the photo, then at her. You're not just connected to Wexford, you are the heir Victoria had you taken to protect the takeover. Leela's world spun. The dreams, the bracelet, Isabel's warning, everything fit together. Adrian's voice steadied her. We are going to deal with this, and she will not touch you again. The boardroom at Steele Dynamics had never felt so tense. Adrian called an emergency meeting early that morning, insisting Lila attend with him. She felt out of place in her simple blouse and slacks, standing beside a table full of powerful executives in tailored suits, but Adrian's presence beside her was steady and unshakable. Victoria Steele entered the room with Damien at her side, confident as ever, expecting to be in control. But Adrian wasted no time. He placed the old Wexford file on the table, his voice sharp and clear. 20 years ago Victoria orchestrated the removal of the Wexford heir. This is Lila Hartman, she is that heir. And these documents prove it. Gasps rippled through the room. Damien tried to laugh it off, calling it absurd, but the color drained from Victoria's face. She attempted to dismiss it. This is ridiculous, just a fantasy cooked up by a yoga teacher. Leela stepped forward, her voice firm. This bracelet was mine the night I was taken. Isabel Crane confirmed it, and these documents connect your name to my removal. Adrian opened the file, showing the photograph, the note, the transfers of Wexford assets into Steele accounts. Beatrice Steele, Adrian's grandmother and chairwoman of the board, fixed her sharp eyes on Victoria. Is this true? Victoria faltered, trying to speak, but Damien's hand on her arm stopped her, his voice low and resigned. It's over, Mum. Beatrice turned to the board. I move that we recognize Leela Hartman as the rightful Wexford heir and restore her holdings from the Steele assets. All in favor, hands raised one by one, overwhelming Victoria's allies. Victoria's glare burned into Lila, but Adrian stepped between them. You're finished. Security escorted Victoria and Damien from the room, her protests echoing down the hallway. The board dispersed, leaving Adrian, Leela, and Beatrice alone. Beatrice stepped forward, taking Leela's hand with surprising warmth. You are stronger than you know, and you belong here. When Beatrice left, Adrian turned to Leela, his expression softened. Are you all right? She took a breath. I don't even know who I am anymore, he smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. You are Leela Hartman, the woman who turned my world upside down, and I wouldn't change a thing. Her heart raced as he continued. 5 years ago, I didn't know it was you that night at the gala, but I felt something. I still do. Lila, marry me not because of Wexford, not because of Steele, but because I want you with me. It was crazy. Everything had happened so fast, but standing there with him, it felt right. Yes, she said, her voice breaking into a smile. Yes, I'll marry you. Adrian pulled her into his arms, kissing her, as the city outside carried on, unaware that 2 lives had just been completely rewritten. Month had passed since the chaos at Steele Dynamics, since Victoria Steele's schemes had been exposed, and since Lila Hartman had said yes to Adrian Steele's proposal. Life had been a whirlwind, but it was beginning to settle into something new and solid. Lila stood on the balcony of Adrian's Richmond penthouse, the city lights stretching wide beneath the night sky. For the first time in weeks, she felt like she could finally breathe. The silver bracelet on her wrist no longer felt like a simple memento from a reckless night. It was now a symbol of who she was, of the truth that had been hidden, and of where she belonged. Adrian stepped outside behind her, slipping an arm around her waist. She leaned into him, smiling. They had made it through the storm together. Adrian was still the CEO of Steele Dynamics, but now he had Lila by his side, not just as his fiancée but as his partner. In every way the board had approved the separation of Wexford's remaining assets from Steele Dynamics, and Lila had taken charge of restoring Wexford Industries. It was overwhelming, stepping into a legacy she'd never known, but she threw herself into it. With determination she built a new team, uncovered old records, and often pulled Adrian into late-night planning sessions fueled by pizza and coffee. He pretended to grumble about the long hours, but the way he looked at her with pride told her he didn't mind. Beatrice Steele became one of Lil's strongest supporters. The formidable matriarch welcomed her into the family, completely insisting on weekly dinners at her estate, where she shared old family stories over long meals and too much wine. "You have fire in you," Beatrice told her. "One night you and Adrian are going to do great things together." The legal mess with Victoria and Damien wrapped up quickly. Victoria faced charges for kidnapping and fraud. Her empire of lies collapsed. Damien turned against her to protect himself and vanished from the company. Leela didn't feel sorry for either of them. They had tried to erase her for their own gain, and now they were paying the price. Adrian stood by her through every court appearance, his steady hand in hers, a constant reminder that she wasn't alone. But one thing still lingered. Isabel Crane's final warning. The psychic had called Lila after the boardroom confrontation, telling her that the Wexford fortune wasn't just money, there was a vault hidden somewhere, and only Lila could open it. The thought kept her awake some nights. She and Adrian joked about it, imagining treasure maps and hidden keys, but part of her wondered what else was still out there waiting for now. Life was full enough. They were balancing two companies, planning a wedding, and figuring out how to merge their very different worlds without losing their minds. Leela looked out over the city lights, Adrian's arm warm around her shoulders. "What's on your mind?" he asked quietly. She smiled, resting her head against him. "Just thinking about how far we've come. 5 years ago I was exhausted and hiding from life. You were a stranger in a mask. Now we're here." Adrian's grin was soft. "Best night of my life, even if I didn't know it then." She laughed quietly, knowing it was true. A night of recklessness had led them here to love, truth, and a future neither of them had expected. The path hadn't been perfect. There were still questions, still challenges ahead, and maybe one day they'd have to follow the mystery of that vault, but whatever came next, they'd face it together. Lila had arrived in Richmond for a weekend job, and left with a family, a company, and the love of her life. Adrian had found the one person who changed everything. It had been messy and unexpected, but it was theirs, and it was perfect in its own way.